Hello everyone and welcome to Growing the Movement Beyond 2019, the year of the vegan. Make some noise if you're happy about that statement, the year of the vegan. It's nice when we come to gatherings like this and feel like we're a part of something big because there's so many other like-minded people around. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Deanna Kangas. And for I am an animal rights activist, and you might know me as one of the co-organisers with Case here for Anonymous of the Voiceless here in South Australia, and also a recent federal election candidate for the Animal Justice Party in the lower house, with Louise here in the upper house for the Animal Justice Party in the Senate, and our Victorian MP here, Meddick, and of course Lynda Stoner here from multiple different things, which I'm going to go to in a minute because they're all written down as well, but amazing animal rights activists here. I'm so excited to be emceeing this panel here today. Now, the way that it's going to work is I'm going to introduce you to each one of these esteemed people on the panel so that you get to know a little bit about their background. I'm then going to give them their topic that they need to speak about. I'll get them to speak one at a time, and once each person has gone through what they have to speak about, we're going to open it up at the end for Q&A, and you can ask a question generally to the entire panel or specifically to someone based on the topic that they have spoken about as well. And so if we get lost, I'll try and direct it. But we've got basically a whole hour of fun here today. So are you ready to get started? Excellent. All right. I'm going to read you then these biographies, so give me one moment. We're going to start with, hold on, iPhones. We're going to start with Andy Meddick. So, the man needs no introduction, but Andy Meddick is a member of the Victoria Parliament for the Animal Justice Party and has been a dedicated animal rights campaigner for many years. From early on, he recognised the critical role that Australian parliamentary system plays in creating positive change for animals. Andy has devoted many years of his life to the Animal Justice Party, volunteering in many roles, including on state committee and the policy team, and has been instrumental in the growth and direction of the Western Victorian Regional Group, as well as guiding the growth of the now independent Ballarat sub-branch. After standing as a candidate in many state and federal elections, Andy was successfully elected as a member of the Legislative Council for Western Victoria in the recent 2018 Victorian state election. He is the second Animal Justice Party MP in Australia, and we are already seeing the significant difference having an MP dedicated to helping animals makes from holding the government accountable to highlighting the endless examples of animal cruelty throughout our society, and to introducing bills to change legislation to create a kinder world for animals. Make a round of applause for Andy Meddick, everybody. Next up, again, Lynda Stoner, who needs no introduction. Worked as an actor throughout most of her life, including theatre, musicals, TV shows including Young Doctors, Cop Shop, Cluedo, The Flying Doctors, Shark's Paradise and Prisoner, and movies including Echoes of Paradise, and I lost my spot, and Crawl. Love it. The text is so small. She has been an animal rights activist for 46 years. Ever since reading Professor Peter Singer's Animal Liberation, she has been involved in countless sit-ins and rescues and exposés into the cruelty of battery hen facilities, broiler sheds, and pig factories. She is currently the CEO of Animal Liberation and Director of Animals Australia. 6 years ago, she wrote the cookbook, Now Vegan, which was reprinted 4 times. Adelaide is her hometown, and she is thrilled to be here. And of course, another one who needs no introduction. Nobody on this panel really needs an introduction. I mean, how fabulous are they all? Another round of applause. Most famous for his 100% vegan pizza bar. I know. Another introduction. You've already got 2 and I haven't even started. Look at that. After a car accident Okay, we're going to get serious now for a moment. After a car accident in 2003 at the age of 17 that led to the diagnosis of having Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer, Case's life changed forever. A dark time in his life that made him see so many aspects of life very differently. Having experienced pain and suffering to himself and those around, his empathy and will to help make the world a better place had become so strong that by 2015, his vegan epiphany finally happened. His passion for veganism is so strong that he got active and helps others to see what he didn't see for so long, whether it's on the street through multiple activism groups, online, or in his social life. He felt it was never enough and more could be done. Opening a vegan business was the next logical step to contribute to the much-needed change in the world. It's what he likes to call activism on a market level. Combined with all his other forms of activism, he hopes to inspire others to begin their vegan journey and help those already vegan to get active. Power in numbers. Case, everybody. And finally, Louise Pfeiffer is a financial services professional. If I could, there's a lot of big words in these biographies, everyone. I've got to be honest. I know they're just so professional. Is a financial services professional who resides in her state of origin, South Australia. After spending 17 years interstate in Sydney and Melbourne, forwarding her career in funds management, superannuation, and financial planning, since returning to Adelaide in 2015, Louise has run her own financial planning business, having held her previous roles in account management, business development, and management consulting to some of Australia's largest financial institutions. She volunteers as an Australian committee member of the Animal Justice Party and actually most recently elected into the National Committee of the Animal Justice Party as well. Louise has been interested in ethics and animal rights since 1995 while studying at university. Frustrated by the rate of legislative change to reduce the systematic suffering of animals, she sought ways to apply her business, marketing, and negotiation skills in the political realm. Undertaking research on the different parties, she found that the Animal Justice Party filled the gaps led by the others on numerous animal rights issues, and most recently ran in the Senate for the federal election. Louise Pfeiffer, everyone. So between our panelists here, we have a wealth of information today, and I'm sure you're all going to learn something absolutely fascinating. So make some mental notes or even write them down in your phones for the Q&A just after. But we are going to throw it to start with Andy Meddick to begin with. So Andy Meddick MP, can I call you the honorary Andy Meddick MP? That is your correct title, isn't it?
No.
No?
No.
Where did I get that wrong?
Well, this is the difference between New South Wales and Victoria. When you're elected in New South Wales, you are automatically the honourable. In Victoria, that is something that it is on? Yeah. Okay, in Victoria, that's an honour that is bestowed by the government of the day on a particular person that they feel has made a great contribution to politics. And it might be a minister who's served for a long period of time, or someone within their party that has done something extraordinary. But the difference also is that when they leave politics in Victoria, that title stays with them for the rest of their lives. So I'm not yet. Not yet.
Yet being the key word, everybody. All right. I think so. Should we vote him? Yes. Hands up. Excellent. You are here in this tent, Andy. Congratulations.
Cheers.
Okay, so let me introduce Andy's topic for today so that I can actually let him speak instead of me. So, he will speak about the importance of having a voice for the animals represented in government. Hands together, Andy Meddick, take it away.
Thank you so much. And look, before I get started, I just want to make a couple of quick points. So first of all, I want to pay tribute to Lynda, all right? For someone who's been involved, because we're talking now about what I'm about to talk about as the end game here to make change for animals. But the starting game is people like Lynda, and she's been involved in animal rights and animal protection for 46 years, right? And that's where we are. This is a social justice movement. and we are moving along a timeline of where we're going to enact real change for animals. But that groundwork, all that hard work, all of those years of campaigning has been down to people like Lynda and Laurie Levy and Dux, 36 years in that. So we are at the end of this. We are at the pointy end of what's going to happen, and we are really only becoming a voice for all of their hard work. So I really want to pay tribute to Lynda. The second point I wanted to make is that then if you look at the four of us that are up here, what we do out in the real world. So Lynda's an esteemed actor, I've got a small businessman, I'm a construction worker, and a financial analyst. It's just, we are people out in the real world. All right, we are doctors, lawyers, etc. We are everything, and there's a narrative in the media that's being portrayed that there is the rest of humanity and then there's vegans, that we are some strange group of people living on an island somewhere off here and we're invading this country and trying to do something terrible, and it's just not the case. So to speak about why it's important to have a voice for animals in the halls of Parliament, I think everybody by now realises what that means, what can actually happen. But it's the culmination of, and it's really the pointy end, as I say, of what happens within the movement. And it's no more important than all of those other things. The activists that are out there that are on the ground, the people that are out there in rescues who are taking in animals, whether they be farm animals or wildlife, and they're rescuers and carers and they're rehabilitating, all of that work, it's all part of the same end game. All that just happens is people like Louise and I get to stand up, and we're, Louise is yet to be elected, but I'm absolutely confident that she will at the next election here. We just need you guys to get behind her. She hasn't stood yet. Again, I don't know if you're putting your hand up. I would assume you are. You better be. To explain what happens up in Parliament there, it's all about relationships, much like it is out in the community. So we've gone into Parliament and I've gone in there with relationships that I already had. I spent 10 years building relationships with current Labor Party members or with other people, other members from all sides of politics, working those relationships and talking to them and finding out what they felt was, where the common ground was, how we could actually work together. Because there's a couple of different types of politics that go on. There's collaborative politics and there's demonstrative politics, and they both have their place. Now, a demonstrative style of politics is when you want to hold a government to account and you know that you can't possibly win that argument in the chamber. You can't win that, but you need to make a point. So you hold the government to account by literally standing there and making a point so that the general public knows that there is something wrong that's going on and they have a government that is not willing to change that. But then you employ that collaborative style of politics where what I've done is try to establish these relationships so that by the time you actually get in there, these people already know that you're not some kind of vegan terrorist. You're actually someone who is a person with a modicum of intelligence who understands not just animal issues, but all the other issues that affect people in the broader community, and that they can work with you on those issues. And once they understand that, they then are far easier to bring around to your way of thinking on these animal issues. And a classic example of that is the fact that we know that we are so close to banning recreational duck shooting in Victoria. After a 36-year campaign led by Laurie Levy, we know that we are very, very close to getting this done. And now the ball is firmly in the court of the Labor government, the Andrews Labor government, and we are very, very hopeful we're actually going to get this done. And we've gone down a number of different avenues that they're too numerous to mention, and I really can't, because for some people they like to keep, their involvement in these issues a bit of a secret, so that they don't offend other people. But we know that we're really close, and we've employed every single avenue we possibly can. But we also have been able to explore other avenues. And to give you an idea, in the Victorian Parliament, there are 18 members of the government in the upper house. There's 11 members of the opposition. And then there are 11 members of the crossbench. So if we were to all combine together, we would actually form an opposition in our own right. But we are too diverse and we have a few things that we don't really agree on. I'm a member of the Animal Justice Party. We have a Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party. All right? And we then have some other party people, like different parties, that are also in favour of things like hunting, etc. So I get 2 spots a year, right, to lead debate and bring those things to a vote. So that's not a lot. And I have a term of 4 years. So you can imagine, with all the animal issues that are out there, the team and I have to make some very, very tough decisions about what we think those things should be. And that doesn't mean that any issue is no less important than another one. But we have to make very pragmatic and practical decisions about the ones that we will prosecute to be the ones that we think we need to get over the line, that we can get over the line, that we can convince government that, yes, this is a good idea and they should vote with us on those issues. So that's very tough. But it doesn't mean that we abandon those other issues, because there are other ways and means of doing things. Now, one of those things is that you have parliamentary inquiries. So that's why I was keen. I knew this going in, so I managed to get myself on 3 committees. So you have committees that are in-house in each individual house, and then you have cross-house committees as well. So I'm a participating member of the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, which is currently undertaking the inquiry into animal activism on Victorian farms. We're going very well with that one. We think we're going to get the outcome that we're after. We think it's backfired on the national member who called it. To give you some idea of that, there were 489 submissions to that inquiry. 64% of those were from the animal activist community. So we're far outweighed. In tandem with that, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party member also brought a bill to Parliament that was to bring mandatory sentencing for anyone who took part in. I'm very careful about my language here, and I want people to start to use this type of language. They're not terrorists, they're not vegan terrorists, they're not lawless animal activists committing these acts. They are whistleblowers. They are enacting unauthorised farm access. If you can please start to use that type of language out in the broader community, people need to understand that they're not violent people going into places and beating people up or frightening children or any of those sorts of things. So he's brought this bill, and effectively it was an ag-gag law. And we were able to successfully argue that this is exactly what it does, and that it actually preempts the outcome of an inquiry. And he's done us a great favour, and he didn't even realise it, because we were able to get the government on side, and we actually defeated that ag-gag bill in Parliament. The side effect of that is that it's now set a precedent within Parliament that they cannot support an inquiry outcome that brings in mandatory penalties or increased sentences, because that has been what was defeated in the bill that was brought before Parliament. So the precedent is there. So it sets that precedent that inquiry, if it brings those outcomes, which we don't believe it will, those recommendations cannot be implemented, because the precedent in Parliament has already been set. So that's one reason why it's important to have animals represented in politics. We're also able to bring in $500,000 in funding for Wildlife Victoria. Now, anyone who's driven on the roads in Victoria will see the signs on the side of the road. They look like any other road warning sign. They're a yellow square, and they have like a little image of, say, a kangaroo or a duck or whatever it might be, and it says, if you see injured wildlife, please call this number. Now, they've operated for 32 years without a single cent of government funding. They've relied upon donations from the general public and volunteers. And like any other organisation that is a volunteer organisation, they've gone through their problems, but they've come out the other side. They have a great committee of management. We were able to secure in the budget $500,000 of funding for Wildlife Victoria, which now means that they can fund having more rescuers out there. They're able to help rescuers and carers. They're able to increase the hotline availability, open for 24 hours a day, and to have kits that they can get out into the general public, so that people can actually do what they do and train people better, so that when they go to different incidents, there's more people out there. We can help wildlife a lot better. So that's one of the other things we're able to do. And then not just through the inquiry process and through the different committees, we're also able to introduce motions into Parliament and get them voted upon. We're also able to introduce, where a government might be bringing a bill or an amendment to an act, we're also able to introduce amendments to that act. So they brought about the guardianship law changes earlier this year, and we were able to introduce 10 amendments to those guardianship laws, which the government accepted were clear and common sense, and they accepted all 10 of them without hesitation. And what they were in relation to people who might be becoming homeless, who might be homeless already, or might have dropped off the radar, or if you're an elderly person suffering dementia who might be going into care, that those people all have assets, or they might have bank accounts, but they also have companion animals that they've shared their lives with, who have been integral in keeping them, having some sort of modicum of comfort in whatever sphere that they're in. Now, whenever they're going into these situations where a family might not necessarily be around, or a family might necessarily be incapable of administering their estate, then what has happened in the past is the courts, or VCAT, the Victorian Civil Administrative Appeals Tribunal, have appointed a guardian. Now, under the previous laws, those guardians never had to take into account the wishes of that person in relation to their assets or the animals that have shared their lives with them. They never had to. Consequently, those animals who might be healthy, happy animals, the guardian had every right under law to take them to a shelter or to the RSPCA and have them euthanised. And there was nothing anybody could do, because that was what they were under the law. So now, with those changes to the guardianship laws that we were able to bring in, the guardian must, under law, take the wishes of that person into account regarding that animal. And not only that, they can no longer arbitrarily take them where that person is missing. They cannot arbitrarily take them to a shelter and have them euthanised. The animal must be found another home. So one of the other things that's actually coming up, and we'll be looking at this into Parliament this week, is the PILA laws, which is the Primary Industries Legislation Act. And we're going to be introducing amendments to that this week, where we'll be trying to shut down the rabbit farming industry in Victoria, and we'll also be trying to shut down the horse meat industry in Victoria. And I can't say that we will be successful, because that's the work. And when I talk about collaborative politics, this is the thing. We've been speaking with all of those people in government that we're friendly with, that we have these relationships with, that we've spent years talking to, letting them know that we're actually reasonable people, that we have interests outside of animals, non-human animals, that we have interests in other areas, and that we can help them with. So we're trying really hard to get these over the line, and I can never guarantee that this is what the vote will achieve, but we're certainly out there and we're fighting for it. And that is the difference, and that's the reason why it's so important, because if we weren't there, if I wasn't there, if Emma wasn't there, if Mark wasn't there, then these animals would not have that ability. Because when you're not there in Parliament, when you're not there to build these relationships with people on a daily basis, it literally is ringing up, writing emails, trying to get in front of these members of Parliament and putting your issues that they won't necessarily pay any attention to. But when you're there and they rely upon you for their vote, and this is how it works in our Parliament. In the lower house, the Andrews Labor government, who pride themselves on being progressive, have a massive majority. They can ram through any legislation they like. The Libs, the Nats, the Greens, the Independents, they don't even have to really bother turning up to work, because there's nothing that they can do to stop any legislation getting through. But in the upper house, the government does not have a majority. They have 18 seats. As I said before, the Libs have 11 and we have 11. So the government needs 3 votes from the crossbench to get any legislation through. That gives us an enormous amount of political leverage. We can get things changed. We can be the deciding vote, and we have been. We have been in several instances, and that's why we've been able to enact some of the changes that we have. But it's also why we'll also be able to enact further changes on really important legislation that's coming up next year. So we'll be bringing things around 1080 poison. We'll be talking about, and that's why I'm pushing for a Royal Commission into the racehorse industry. We'll be bringing a whole host of things. And I'd love to be able to tell you the work that we're getting done and the things that we know that we've got commitment on government from, but I just can't. But I'm happy to say that there will be some great advances for non-human animals in the state of Victoria over the next 3 years, and we really look forward to bringing them to you. But what's also really important, and I can't stress this enough, we need more members in every single state, because the more members we have, the more seriously the major parties take us when it comes to time for negotiations. When more members we get, the greater chance we have of getting those messages out there and getting more members in Parliament. The more members in Parliament we have in every single state, the more seriously those major parties have to take both us and our issues. They have to begin to change the way that they look around laws for non-human animals, and they have to start to enact those changes. And it comes down to us, it comes down to you, it comes down to every single person out there who's a vegan, who's a vegetarian, or even a person who just thinks that they love animals, that they care for animals. You can help make a difference. If you're a person who's completely not in the vegan community, the vegetarian community, but people who might be attending the cheese fest over the road, for instance, if you're shocked and abhorred by what happened in that 7:30 report on racehorses, then you can make a difference. You can volunteer for us, you can vote for Animal Justice Party at every single election. You can send that message to the major parties that animal issues matter to you, and that forces them to make changes. It forces them to consider them in every part of legislation. Philip Wallen said that this is the greatest social justice movement since the end of slavery, and he's right. He's absolutely right. Because in so many aspects in our community, animals, non-human animals, are suffering under slavery conditions, and we need to liberate them. We really do. And the only way we can do it is to have all of us on board in every aspect, whether you're an activist, whether you're someone out there doing outreach. We all need to work together, and we need to understand that doing that outreach, doing all those things are part and parcel of the same solution, and the political end is just the tip of the iceberg. It's the end game. It's what all that other work that you guys do that enables us to make those arguments to politicians and get those laws changed. That's why it matters. That's why politics matters. That's why it matters having elected members of Parliament for the animals.
Thank you, Andy. There's just so many different issues when it comes to implementing change when on a parliamentary level, and this is why a vote for a minor party is never wasted. When you hear the amount of work that is going on behind the scenes, you can see why it's so important that we have strength in numbers. I'm going to move the panel on now to Lynda. So let me introduce Lynda's topic. Give me one moment. If I opened up the right thing, that would be helpful. So, as you know, Lynda Stoner comes from influential organisations Animals Australia and Animal Liberation, and she will discuss what is needed to implement change as far as those organisations go. Lynda.
Thank you very much. I personally could hear Andy speak all day. He's a bit of a hero. If we want things done in New South Wales, it's always look to what Andy's doing. When people say it can't be done, it's like Andy's already set the precedent. And we are in New South Wales particularly hopeful about the whole rabbit farming issue because, like Victoria, there's only one intensive rabbit farm left, and that place has been up for sale for 6 years and there are no buyers. So we're just hoping that we can get rid of rabbit farming in this country. There's one entrenched one in Western Australia. They've hunkered down for the long haul. But anyway, so Andy Meddick is one of the hardest working, most amazing politicians, and he is an inspiration. And I was lucky to first meet him when I had the honour of participating in a 1080 forum that he put on about 2 years ago, and he's very inclusive, and that's part of the power of the man, is that he is inclusive. And so lots of people from different walks of life came together to speak about the horrific thing that is 1080. And, you know, lots of groups, including Andy, have been working really hard for a long time to try and get this evil thing banned. Australia is one of the last remaining countries to still liberally use 1080s. And I am sure that with Andy at the helm, you know, we can finally manage to do this. Now, I'm the oldest person in the room, so I have age I can look back on, and I can see how far we've come from, let's say, 1975, when Professor Peter Singer wrote his book, which was My Epiphany. He started the whole contemporary, in my humble opinion, the whole contemporary animal rights movement. And, you know, many groups have sprung up from that. Indeed, animal liberation started 1 year after the book came out. And now we have animal liberation groups in Queensland, the ACT, New South Wales, Victoria, and South Australia. Not that long after that, the Federation of Animal Societies started under Peter Singer's stewardship, along with Dr. Christine Townend, and that is now Animals Australia, and you can see how far that's come. So back in those days, it was very hard to find kindred spirits and very easy to find people who were ready to be sarcastic about what I was talking about, who ridiculed everything. You know, it was just, I was seen as very odd, very peculiar. Probably am still, but anyway. But the thing is, despite, you know, friends and everybody else lambasting me, it didn't bother me because I knew that what Peter Singer had written about was so right and so horrific. I mean, my sister, who's in the audience, we grew up with chickens, and they were always allowed to run around and do what chickens are supposed to do. So when I read about battery hens in Peter Singer's book, I honestly couldn't believe it. I simply couldn't believe it. I didn't know anything about factory farming. And so the people that I was working with used to just throw questions at me in not a happy way. And so I determined to learn everything I possibly could about all aspects of animal cruelty, and didn't that open my eyes to the suffering of trillions of animals when you include vivisection and, you know, all manner of so-called sports, like we've just had the horse racing expose. And thank you, Andy, for, you know, I mean, the Prime Minister, for one, is quite happy to bandy the expression vegan terrorists around. And, you know, it's like if you say something once, twice, three times, it becomes the script for everybody else. They just all pick up on it, and, you know, we're called extremists. And so Andy's right. Semantics are so important. The way you speak about things, like, you know, we would never call an animal a thing or an it. It's a he or a she. It's, you know, it's language. Language is so powerful. So back in the days, over 4 decades ago, it was very hard to, you know, there were very few vegetarian options around then, you know, makeup, cosmetics. Non-leather shoes were easy to find, but other things, other alternatives were very thin on the ground. But I still believe, I'm a very hopeful, very optimistic person, and I always held strong to the fact that, you know, I must admit with my friends, it's like I was always gobsmacked when I would share these things with them and expect in a heartbeat that they too would become at least vegetarian, and it just bewildered me. And, you know, otherwise compassionate, very socially aware, and all the rest of it. And they didn't come along with me for animal rights. And I must admit, there's a part of me that to this day remains perplexed by that. And so we've come a long, long way since me not being able to get even, you know, practically pasta that was vegetarian. So I was vegetarian for a very long time and not vegan for long enough. And so if you're looking for inspiration about how to change people, some people won't be changed. The young folk in the movement, the young animal liberationists, they kept telling me how, you know, the evils of dairy. And I, too, was blinkered. And so, you know, it goes some way to understanding why people don't want to look at these things. They don't want to look at the horse racing expos. They don't want to. They just don't want to. Life's happier with your head in the sand. We all know that. And then I was asked to do a paper on the dairy industry. And so I was forced to look at it. And a friend and I were doing a recce for a piggery that we ended up doing a sit-in in. And he ordered a vegan pizza, and I ordered my pizza, and all I could see was this glistening stuff, and it made me feel nauseous, and so that was the end for me. That was it. So that was just over a decade ago, and it's so easy when people say, oh, but it's so hard, but what do you eat? It's like, oh my goodness, what don't we eat? And I've always said that vegans are such foodies and such food hedonists. I mean, we just have such an abundance of choice. And, you know, the world is changing more rapidly than I could have ever dreamed of. You know, countries like Germany are leading the way. They are the fastest growing plant-based country. They're bringing out more vegan options than any other country. America's vegan population has risen in the last 3 years by 600%. Yeah, I know. And yeah, in Britain, a still impressive 350% rise in veganism. It's happening around the world. Very heartening is the fact that the Chinese government is strongly encouraging their citizens to have at least 50% plant-based in their diet. So that's a fantastic thing. Yeah. Companies like Google, you know, they are really pushing for their gargantuan population of employees to become plant-based. Walmart, which is a massive supermarket in America, they're seeking out more and more plant-based options. So this is growing like topsy. It's growing faster than I could ever have dreamed. Of course I dreamed, but it's actually a reality. And Australia has, you know, per head per capita, the third fastest rise in vegans of any country in the world. And we are one of the swiftest vegan growing business countries in the world. And that's just so fabulous. You know, considering our population comparatively is so tiny. So I'm greatly excited by all of that, and to be here, to have a 2-day vegan festival is just a staggering concept. And, you know, obviously Adelaide does it better than anyone else, and I can say that. It's my hometown, and you guys are the best. So I think that's probably enough from me, but I just want to thank you all for being here, and I'm honoured to share this panel of fabulous people, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynda. You know, it's interesting when you hear stories like that of Lynda's. Many people who have been vegan, perhaps since it really blew up in the last couple of years, like myself, you know, I'm only at 5 years now, will know that back 5 years ago, people would go, "You what?" But could you imagine what it was like all the years ago when Lynda first started? It would have felt like you were on another planet. So thank you for sticking it out, Lynda, because that takes some guts for sure. Yeah. Case. Am I allowed to tell them that's actually your name? His name is actually Case. That's his name. I know, it's a good one, isn't it? Is a vegan business owner and social outreach activist, bringing to us his thoughts on the effectiveness of spreading the truths to our community and the world. Take it away, Case.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here to see us speak, and I'm honoured to be sharing the panel with you all. So thank you. Round of applause for them, please. I just want to start off by saying what you said about this whole terrorist label that we've been given by the government. And I think what they do is they say the lie enough times for them to finally believe it themselves and hope that the public will take it on, and it just becomes plastered all over all the tabloids and the media run with it. But at the end of the day, we are just average people. You know, as you said, we are lawyers, doctors, nurses, people who just own family businesses. So we're not just some fringe weirdos who decided, let's go do something different for the sake of it. We are regular people, but the difference is between us and everybody else is that we've had enough. You know, now we want to make change. We don't want to sit by and watch the world just do what it's always done and hope that one day something will just change, which is why it's so important to speak up. And I've said this over the weekend, it doesn't mean that we have to run out there and start screaming on the streets and doing things to make people think what is going on with those weirdos. It's about trying to educate the public, trying to change the perception, because an idea will never change unless it is challenged. And we've gone through many, many different movements in our history, you know, everything from slavery to women's rights, gays' rights, and civil rights movement, everything, you know, we needed to challenge it. And it's so important to do every avenue possible, because if we are just out there speaking to somebody on the streets, that one person will get the message, possibly. But nobody in politics is doing anything that way if we are not supporting them. So it's important that we get behind everything possible, everything from grassroots activisms to political change. And I had enough when I turned vegan, because I used to be in non-vegan businesses many years ago with my family. But when I turned vegan, I felt like I needed to make a change on the market level. So I opened up V-Spot Pizza Bar as a challenge to all the other pizza shops that we are going to match you in price, in product, except ours doesn't involve the enslavement and exploitation of non-human animals. Ours is from plants. So yeah, business is tough. Of course it is. Every business is tough, and this one's tougher because now we are appealing to a smaller market, and the more closed-minded people are, the harder it's going to be for us to convince them over, which is why it's vital for us to speak up now. It's been a long time coming, this movement. I mean, you know, Lynda, as she's covered it, this has been from such a long time ago, but now is the tipping point. We have so much more power. We have so much more people on our side. Social media is a weapon that we can harness and use for our advantage. You know, you can spread a message now to potentially thousands, if not millions of people, whereas back in the day we couldn't do that. It's just the people that you talk to in your daily life. So don't underestimate the power that is in your hands, and that's the beauty of the animal rights movement, is that you take action, you're the one that makes the decision, and you can do big things. The reason why the point that you brought up about us being average people is that is the power right there. You don't have to be somebody who's born into some power to make a change in this world. You can step up, use your voice, and get into the field that you want to, that you feel is going to resonate the most with your beliefs and the way that you want to spread the message. But I think the problem is so many people are wanting to do massive change instantaneously, and that just isn't possible. The little wins along the way will add up to something momentous at the end of the day, and that's what we need to remember, that move forward and always get out there and lend a hand, because there is so many groups that just need your voice and need your support. So for me, I do animal rights activism on the streets, as Deanna mentioned, in Anonymous for the Voiceless, but I'll get involved in any group that I can possibly do so. I will run the business in the hopes that it will get the message out there. And we do get plenty of non-vegans in my business. A lot of people ask me that, thinking that it's just vegans through the door. And no, it's a lot of non-vegans. And I took a big risk by putting animal rights messages on the wall in the shop. Now, that might not be the best idea for business, but to me, it's not about myself. I'm willing to put myself in a tougher position to speak up for the animals. Because if you look at this festival today, the amount of dogs that have walked past, as we're just sitting here talking and barking, everybody, whether you love animals or not, wants to see them happy and not hurt. Judging by the amount of dogs in the room and outside, everybody just loves them. And even if they don't, they're just like, they don't want to harm them. The compassion is inside of people. They just haven't woken up to extend it to other animals. And I was one of those people. I used to be a hunter. A lot of people didn't know this. I used to have shops chicken shops, pizza, and it's just horrible past of mine that I'm ashamed of. But everybody, I'm guessing here, feels the same. We look back and we think, how was I that barbaric? But the thing is, it's not our faults. We are in a society that pushes this ideology, this belief on us from the day that we are born through fear-mongering, propaganda, and misinformation. And it's up to us to change it, and we can make that big change. We can support the political parties that are going to get into government and make that change for us across the board through legislation. But we also need to be out there on the streets telling people what is going on, spreading it online, because once you do that, those people then will support the political movement as well. We need the power in numbers, and unity is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Case. And I just want to touch on something that Case and I often get to speak about because we do so much activism together, which is the fact that we do see a lot of the time, and we talk to our activists every time we have a cube of truth in Rundle Mall, to say that it's not about fighting with the public. And that's, I think, what we need to recognise as vegans in this movement. We need to stop trying to fight with people who aren't vegan. We need to share our message in a positive way, the most positive way possible, with compassion, because you don't want to be the reason that someone doesn't want to go vegan just to prove that you're right, essentially. You don't want to be that reason. You want to be an open book of education, and you want to remember that you were once there too. And if someone was coming at you, telling you that you were doing something wrong, you'd also be triggered by that, because nobody is intentionally doing these things. Just remember that it's education.
I agree 100%. Thank you for clarifying that. It's when I say for people to speak up, I'm not asking them to go out there and butt heads with people and yell at them and scream at them. It's just be proud of the fact that you are standing up for such innocent beings and wear that proudly, basically. You know, a lot of people shy away from saying that they are vegan. And I've never been, from the day that I've been a vegan, not because I love this label of I want to put my head up high above everyone else, but it's because I know I'm standing up for a cause that everyone else believes in too. They just don't know it yet. So speak with compassion and help people make that connection. That's a very, very good point. Thank you.
Thank you, Case, once again. Round of applause. The more vegan small business owners we have, we can slowly take over without anybody noticing. Now we'll hand it over to Louise. So Louise Pfeiffer has had years of experience in the corporate banking world and provides an insight into how effective making our consumer dollar count is to social change. Give it up for Louise.
Thank you. I actually have recently sold my financial planning practice to focus more on the work I do with the Animal Justice Party. But one of the things I did specialise in was ethical investing. I often had a number of vegan clients who would actually talk to me about what are some of the products that they can do that will align with their ethical beliefs as well. I'll come back to that. I just want to talk a bit about consumer behaviour and the market in general, like people that have got dollars to spend. It's actually what makes the world go round. It's what drives a lot of the institutionalised animal suffering, is the money that sits behind that in terms of what can be made. But something that's been interesting in recent years, that's come out by research by one of the consulting firms, Deloitte, is that consumer behaviour, their traditional purchasing decisions around food in particular, have been made on taste, price, and convenience. That's the traditional model for how people have made their decisions and how food manufacturers have then, worked out their product development. But more recently, a study that they did in 2016 has found that that's actually changing, and now consumers are now factoring in other things into their value choices, the value equation, and there are evolving drivers that are becoming increasingly important when people make their choices around health, social impact, environment, and transparency. And this is all really, really good for growing the vegan movement, because when businesses realise that this is the stuff that's important to people with the money, they're evolving their products accordingly. And so I've been watching what's been happening in the last few years. I've been vegan since 2011 and vegetarian since 1995, also after reading Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. It's an excellent book. I encourage anyone who hasn't read it to pick it up. But I ended up, after university, in superannuation funds management, capital markets, institutional stockbroking, funds management. So I learned a lot about how the market operates and how the stock market prices stocks based on expectations of growth and profit and other things. And one of the most exciting things that happened this year, which a lot of you might have heard about, was the Beyond Meat IPO, the initial public offering in May this year. They went to the market. It was priced, I think, $25 a share. They did a capital raising, and on the day that it launched on the stock exchange, it went up to 169%. And that sounds impressive, but right now it's actually trading at $100 per share, which is 4 times what it actually launched at. But what was exciting about that 169% rise in that first day trading is that was the biggest IPO since the global financial crisis. And it got the market really excited. It got me very excited too, because it means that the investors, the institutional fund managers, they are seeing value in this market. They know that consumers are spending money to improve their health, their well-being, the ethics of animals. And where there's money to be made and it aligns with ethics and it leads to like such a big gain in their stock price, it just screams excitement, because when you get these big companies with these they're investing in companies like this, but also others like Impossible Foods. And then you get organisations like Tyson Foods, who's the second largest meat manufacturer on the planet, investing in cell-based agriculture startups like Memphis Meats. You get Bill Gates, Richard Branson, and others all investing in the plant-based protein space. You have to get excited, because where there's money to be spent on marketing. And when there's money to be spent on marketing, it means they can get the word out to consumers about these products. And if you ever doubt the power of marketing, never forget that marketing has convinced the smartest species on this planet that we have the same nutritional needs as a baby cow. Don't ever forget that. So, but back to some of the other exciting things happening in the space globally. Impossible Foods, I listened to a podcast the other day with CEO Pat Brown. He's been vegan for 15 years. They're obviously just launched their burgers. They're supplying burgers now, the Impossible Burger, to the Burger King chain around America, which is just insane. But he talks about what they're doing in terms of the money that they do have, that they've privately raised, they're not actually a listed company, to develop their product. They haven't just made a burger and then they've taken it to market. They are constantly evolving their burger. Because as he puts it, and I do like this terminology, because they do see it, they're using a very methodical business approach to what they're doing. He says, we want our burger to be better than the incumbent technology, which is the cow burger. So they're constantly evolving the taste, the mouthful, the smell, all of that. And so the burger that you get from the Impossible Burger today will be different in a couple of years, because they know that consumers don't like cruelty to animals. They don't like eating food that came from a carcass of an animal, but they love the taste, the smell, and all these other things. So they are going to win on all of these metrics: the price, convenience, taste, with a better product. Back here in Australia, the other exciting thing to happen is Jack Cowan, who is the owner of Hungry Jack's here. He made a decision a year or two ago. He noticed that millennials are also not wanting to eat meat for health, ethical, environmental reasons. And so he himself is actually the 25th richest Australian in this country. So he is worth $2.79 billion. He's like, I'm going to invest some money in this, because he'd seen what had happened with the Beyond Burger, and he got some money, and he partnered with the CSIRO and their joint venture arm, and he said, here's some money. Can you please develop a plant-based burger that will be equivalent to the Whopper that we sell in our stores? And for him, he didn't talk about the ethical reasons from his own perspective or anything like that. He said this is a business decision, because consumers are changing what they want to buy, and we want to meet the market. And if there's money to be made and it can be ethical, why wouldn't you? And as you would have seen, this burger launched 2 weeks ago. So in 8 months, it took them to develop this technology. to get a burger that he was happy with to take out to their stores. The Beyond Burger took a couple of years to get to that same point. So that, again, that's the power of having consumers changing their minds, making these choices, and the money that follows will help drive the changes that the animals so sorely need. Just a couple of other stats that I am really excited about here in Australia. The plant-based protein market is expected to be worth between $3 and $6 billion by 2030. And UBS, another global consulting firm, did some research, and they said that right now, last year, $4.6 billion is the size of the market for plant-based proteins. They estimate that by 2030, globally, it'll be up to $85 billion. So this is, awesome news. So back to like what you can do from an individual's perspective is that you can talk about this stuff to your friends and family. You need to say, the change is coming. There's money going here. Get excited. There's going to be products on the market in your supermarket soon, if you haven't tried them already, that are evolving. There'll be something that will replace the meal that you like right now. So make sure you talk about it and be really excited. But just bringing that back down to our individual choices as well. Obviously, you can shop for ethical products already. Just touching on my field of expertise previously around the ethical investing. If you are interested in making sure that your money that you invest from a superannuation perspective, there are funds out there that exclude animal products. So there isn't actually a vegan super fund here, but there are others that are also on the market that exclude not just animal products, but they can exclude animal agriculture, they exclude any company or organisation that's involved in the live export trade, among other ethical filters that people might wish to apply, such as gambling or alcohol or anything like that. So there are ethical funds out there for non-superannuation money and superannuation money. You can seek them out, and if you want to talk to me individually about that, I'm happy to point you in the right direction. It'd be general advice only. I can't provide individual advice. And from a banking perspective, the same thing goes. There are banks out there that won't lend money to live export companies and things like that. So if you're interested in finding a bank that also aligns with your ethics, they exist as well. So that was essentially just what I wanted to talk about, like the power of marketing, the power of money, the power of consumer choices, and the changes coming from all levels. We're getting the political change that we need. We've got the activism movement going strong as well, and now the rest of the capital markets and the organisations that are there to make money are following suit as well. So it's a very, very, very exciting time to be vegan.
Thank you, Louise. It's just a little bit of a tip of an iceberg, really, isn't it? And once the plant-based products become so popular that the price starts to go down and the demand is so much there, the meat products will then be where the plant-based products are now. And it will be much harder to source and harder to get. But we hope that the technology is being developed to make that a reality, and we're probably going to see it in our lifetimes, which is amazing to hear. Now, from what I can see, that has actually brought us all the way to time, because our wonderful panelists had so much interesting information to share. Do we have any wiggle room for Q&A at all? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 5 minutes. Okay. So if we do a couple of really quick questions, can we have some really concise answers from whoever would like to do so? Please. Okay. All right. Go for it.
So my name's Alicia, and this is my husband Josh, and I direct this question to you, David. So you spoke before about the horse meat industry. And so this comes from a really personal experience. My husband and I, we rescued an ex-racehorse towards the end of last year. He was incredibly broken. He'd been through several homes. And on the 18th of February this year, he almost killed me. And after multiple tests and advice from his rescuers and all of our experts, they realised that it was his 10 years in the industry of trauma. And so on the 28th of February this year, we set his soul free. His name was George, and he was the best boy. And I have loved horses for years. It's what got me into becoming vegan. It's what got me into activism. And I want to not just obviously share George's story because he deserves that, but it's lit this fire in me to help bring that damn industry down. And I can't explain the fight that's in me now. Like it nearly took me, but the love for George and to not let him be one more number is more. So I ask you, what else can my husband and I do to help bring this damn industry down? We share his story every day. I don't want him to just be another number. I don't want them horses to be forgotten. And the fact that you said the horse meat is close to closing down, I can't even put that into words. What can my husband and I do to help in any way possible to just tick one more box off and help you guys in this fight?
Thank you, Alicia.
And I'll try and be as quick as possible. But it is a very complex issue. It's a really complex problem. And I feel your pain. I can hear the emotion in your voice, and I'm sure your husband is feeling exactly the same way. And look, everyone in this room should be aware of the size of the industry that we're up against in this fight. It is enormous. It is worth billions upon billions of dollars every year. And we have to be aware that we have to attack this industry from all sides, okay? That the starting point is that any year, between 12 and 16,000 horses are bred to come into this industry. That's a lot. And they're all looking for that next black caviar, that next Winx, right? And they overbreed. And what happens to these horses that don't make the grade, as well as the ones that are older that are retiring out of the industry? They're ending up at the knackery. There's no retirement plan for horses, whether they're thoroughbreds, whether they're standard breds, whether they're from the trots. It doesn't matter where they're coming from. Some are rehomed, some. We've seen in New South Wales that their so-called tracking system doesn't work because they lie about where the horses go. Okay, so we have to stop this breeding, this overbreeding in looking to produce these champions at the very start. And I wish I had a really simple solution for you, but I don't. I really don't. But what it requires is the pressure from the public to maintain the outrage of what they've seen here, all right? To keep that pressure going. So just keep having the conversations with everyone that you know. Go and see the Premier of your state. Look to get a meeting with him. Don't be fobbed off by emails and phone calls from advisors. Form a group. Get other people like you that have had that same experience. Get in front of your local politicians, right? Get in front of them and tell them you're not going to stand for this anymore, all right? And we're going to introduce those amendments. I can't say that they're going to be successful, but I really want them to, right? Because this is where we're taking it. We're taking it from the point of view, well, we want to stop the consumption of horse meat. So I'm not just talking about this abattoir. There is an abattoir here in South Australia that's actually licensed for horse meat for human consumption, but they haven't done it for a long time, okay? That last one is in Brisbane. It's in Caboolture, right? That's the last one that exports horse meat overseas. What we're looking to do with our amendment is to make the consumption of horse meat illegal, which also means pet food. Look, I can't say that I'm super hopeful of getting that one through because it is a massive industry, but we'll keep fighting that. But that's also why I come back to this with Louise and with everybody else. We've got to keep getting more members of parliament in. We've got to change that. And part of that education process is young people, right? 18 to 27-year-olds are the largest untapped voting bloc in this country, and they are sick and tired of seeing this animal cruelty. And it's to speak to these guys, get them to stand for parliament, get them to make the changes that you want to see because they're the ones that can take control. Last thing parliament needs is more people like me, like middle-aged white guys, okay? Because they're so entrenched in those industries. They've got money invested in them. They've got racehorses. We've got to get rid of them. We've got to get them out of parliament, all right? Because that way we can get the changes that we want, all right? And like I say, I wish I had a simple solution for you, but I really don't. But I feel your pain because I've watched a lot of animal cruelty videos and footage over the years. I'm not going to say that you become hardened to it because you don't. You feel that pain all the time, but you steel yourself to watch it, right? To get through it so you know the subject. I couldn't watch it. I watched halfway through. I had to get up and leave it and come back to it the next day before I could even talk about it. It's one of the most horrendous things I've ever seen.
I'm going to have to interrupt. We're at time. We're
Sorry.
getting called off the stage. Sorry, Andy. Give him a round of applause. Thank you for your question. I'm sure many of you have questions, and perhaps if some of our panelists, if they don't have to rush off anywhere, they may be happy to speak to you outside the tent because we need to. Sorry. Yeah, okay. Over. We'll head out the tent if you have Q&A because obviously there's other things that are scheduled in this one specifically. But one last time before we leave, please give everybody a massive round of applause. Thank you all for sharing your expertise with us and for all that you do in this movement. We've got this, everybody.